Hello, Michael. I'm a friend of your mother's. I'd like to help you.
They might listen to these bastard straps then.
I'm afraid you might hurt yourself, Michael.
I'm Michael.
I see. Well, let's introduce ourselves. My name is Paul Tucker.
And I'm Matthew. Now kindly undo these bastard straps.
Well, if you're Matthew, why don't you just make those straps disappear?
That's much too vulgar display of power, Tucker.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the Movies and Milk 30-Day Film Challenge, where today myself and Michael will be discussing the film that terrified us to our very souls. Now, just to preface, before this video begins, I'm going to limit the amount of time that I actually talk about this film, because as Michael would very well know, I could talk about this film until I'm blue in the face. And I'm not going to allow myself to do that, because as I've mentioned previous times throughout the series, these are not reviews of the films as such, just a reason as to why we have chosen it for that specific day. And on top of that, I do plan on making a video dedicated to this film entirely sometime in the near future. So if you couldn't already tell which film I'm going to be talking about today, if you couldn't guess from the intro to the video or by the t-shirt that I'm wearing, that is actually quite a big hint. We're going to be talking about William Peter Blatty's The Exorcist. The Exorcist 1973 was written by William Peter Blatty, also the author of the original book, and was directed by William Friedkin. So don't get mixed up with your Willies there. William Peter Blatty had written up a screenplay for the film, and he wanted William Friedkin specifically to helm the role as a director for the film. He had previously watched French Connection and he really loved that sort of documentary, gritty style that he had to it. And he really wanted to utilise that style with what would eventually become The Exorcist. Today marks day 13, which in and of itself is a very spooky number, I know, and I think that's why Michael chose today for the scariest film. However, out of all the days so far, out of all the 13 days that we've gone through so far, this was certainly the easiest choice that I've had to make, because there legitimately has only been one film that has truly scared me, and that is The Exorcist. Now, there is a whole origin story as to why this film is so terrifying to me, especially when I first saw this film. I watched it when I was 9 years old. That was the first time I'd ever seen The Exorcist. Mother, what were you thinking? However, I don't really believe that to be the reason as to why The Exorcist affected me as much as it did. I've always been a lover of vintage horror films. Everything from The Exorcist, Rosemary's Baby, Amityville Horror, The Omen, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Halloween, to name but a few. These films are all regarded as terrifying films, but none of them affected me as much as The Exorcist had. So for those who have yet to see The Exorcist, it essentially follows Kris McNeil, who is a huge Hollywood actress, who travels to Georgetown to shoot her latest Hollywood production. During her stay in Georgetown, her daughter Reagan falls suspiciously ill. It proves to be much more of a progressive thing, and doctors believe it to be a neurological disease. However, as it happens, she happens to be possessed by the devil himself.
Alright, let's see what the... Keep away! The sow is mine!
Now that is essentially the meat of the film, and that's what pretty much everyone recognises The Exorcist to be. Additionally, there are another 2 or 3 plot lines which are scattered throughout the film and interweaved into the film, which really add to the meat and the bones of the final production. You've got Father Damien Scariest, who is a priest who's really battling against his own faith. He looks after his mother, and while she's progressively been pulled towards death, that's where his faith is really shaken, and that's where he really starts to consider, is there actually a God? And so much later into the film, when an opportunity of an exorcism presents itself, he believes this to be his last opportunity to take that leap of faith quite literally. And we also have Father Merrin, who plays an incredibly integral role in the film, for by only having 20 minutes or so of screen time. He is portrayed by the wonderfully gifted Max von Sydow, who sadly passed away earlier this year. He is the character that we are first introduced in the first couple of minutes of The Exorcist, where he finds an artifact of the demon Pazuzu, who would later possess the young girl Reagan. And of course, probably the most famous aspect of the film, the exorcism itself, we have Father Merrin and Father Scariest who are performing said exorcism. And not to mention that Father Merrin is on the front cover of the film. This is one of the most famous stills in all of movie history. I believe a lot of people really look down upon this film when they're not a fan of the horror genre. Of course it is a horror film, but I see it much more than that. I genuinely view this film as a film of faith. Even William Peter Blatty, the writer of the book and the screenplay to the film, has argued that this is a film of faith, and he hates when people say that the devil won in the end, because that is simply not the case. But there are so many themes and allegories to this film, to which all of them point towards this being a film of faith. As a Christian myself, and now as an adult watching this film, I can truly appreciate where William Peter Blatty is coming from. I totally understand the intended message of the film, and I think William Peter Blatty done a fantastic job with the book and the screenplay, and equally William Friedkin done a fantastic job of directing this film. In my opinion, he's never quite been able to top his subsequent work following The Exorcist, but I suppose at the end of the day that's what makes The Exorcist one of the greatest films ever made. And that is where I will draw a close with my review for The Exorcist. My throat's getting dry, so a wee swallow of milk there will do the world of good. This is certainly a contender for my top 5 favourite films of all time, and it's definitely one that I believe that everyone should see at least once in their life. Anyway, Michael, I'm going to pass this back into your very capable hands, so take it away, Mr. Michael McGorry.
Because we're talking about scary films, I figured I'd make the set a bit more scary. And by scary, I mean I've closed the curtains. Now, in my personal opinion, the horror genre is the most subjective genre out there. When it comes to movies that scare us, it doesn't necessarily need to be classed as a horror film in order for someone to find it scary. I mean, films like Detroit and 12 Years a Slave aren't classed as horror films on IMDb, but I imagine there are people out there that find those films to be terrifying. And while the film that I have picked is classed as a horror film on IMDb, it's a very personal one for me. Personally, I'm not someone who believes in like ghosts or demons or any of that supernatural stuff. For me personally, my worst nightmare is being trapped in a room filled with people who I don't like, who are off their tits on drugs. And that is why my pick is 2018's Climax. Climax is a French production by Argentinian director Gaspar Noé, who's very well known for just putting some very fucked up things in his movies. And it features a dance group who gather up in this abandoned school during a winter's night to rehearse their latest routines. And after a night of constant dancing, the guys and girls decide to relax a bit. They decide to let the edge off. They talk shit about each other behind their backs, and they drink the sangria. Sangria, which has been spiked by LSD. And then the second half of the film is just... yeah. Again, to me, this film just tapped into something within me, and as such, it was the most effective horror film that I've ever seen. For starters, we've got the setting. It's an abandoned school during a winter's night, and it's a very winter's night, may I remind you. You can't see anything out there but white. So already, yourself and the characters start to feel a little bit isolated. If something does go wrong in this building, then it's just going to go tits up. And then you've got the characters as well. I mean, I'm not a prude or anything. I like a good party, me, but none of the characters in this film are likeable in the slightest. And then when they all start to trip balls, some of them get a little bit freaky. They get to start a little bit touchy-feely. There's a little bit of incest. There's a little bit of child neglect. There's people kicking and screaming left, right and centre. And I'm just like, come on, can somebody just switch the film off? And yes, this plot is fairly simple. It's nothing that we've not seen before, but it's the way that this film is executed that just made it stick in my mind. For one, the camera work in the second act is made to look like one continuous shot. It's constantly spinning. It's making you feel a bit queasy. And then there's the sound design as well. Not only do you constantly have people kicking and screaming throughout the entire movie, but you've also got the pulsating soundtrack as well, which, just like the camera work, does not stop throughout the entire second act of the movie. But then, to me personally, the best thing about this film is the fact that you don't actually see what the characters are saying. Despite the occasional disorienting camera work, the film makes you feel like you're the only sober one at the party. And again, given where the film is set, you just start to feel a little bit helpless. And the film does have a major flaw in that outside of the hypnotic dance sequences, the first half is just boring as sin, because it is just a bunch of people talking shit about each other. But for me personally, a film has never made me feel so vulnerable, delicate, helpless, And like I said, you just feel isolated throughout the entire film. And it doesn't help the fact that the characters are speaking French. So that's the end of the video, ladies and gentlemen. We really hope you enjoyed. Please be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comment section down below what films scared you the most. And if you wish to take part in the 30-day movie challenge yourself, you can find the template over on the Movies and Milk Instagram page. Until next time, stay safe, don't do anything stupid, and we'll see you again tomorrow. Ah!